Alrighty, we are more than halfway done, and you should be on the second page of your notes in your interactive notebook, the second flippable that we made include in there yesterday. So we're going to talk about introductory dependent clauses, also known as a complex sentence. Now, a complex sentence just means that there's a dependent clause in there. A dependent clause could be at the beginning, or the middle, or at the end, or it could be all three. You can have more than one dependent clause. For our purposes today, and for right now, we're going to really focus on using them at the beginning of the sentence. One, that helps us find them much easier, and it's also going to help us be consistent with that idea of punctuation at the end of some type of introductory word, phrase, or clause. So an introductory dependent clause starts with an awubis, one of those words that we have a little acronym for that's going to help us remember the names of some of them: after, while, until, before. The proper name for these would be a subordinating conjunction, and there are very many more of these. And if you look at the poster in our classroom as you're working or writing, that's a good resource to help you remember that. But this is just a little quick reference. What makes a dependent clause different and more confusing is that some of them, like after and before and since, are also prepositions. So we really have to go back to that formula that a dependent clause starts with one of these words, but in this case it's going to have a subject and a verb, which is not allowed in a prepositional phrase. So if we took that awubis off, we have a complete sentence. Once we put the awubis at the beginning, though, it leaves our reader hanging a little bit, and I'll show you why in a second. The other important thing to remember is that we've got a comma at the end of them. And something that I didn't add and need to is that they also act as transitions when we use them in writing. Okay? So let's take a look at an example of a sentence. When I heard Evanescence the first time, I became a huge fan. I see my awubis here as when. If I take it off, I have a complete sentence. I heard Evanescence for the first time. When I put that when at the beginning, it leaves my reader hanging. When I heard Evanescence the first time, then I want to think, well, what happened when you heard it the first time? I became a huge fan. So this part of our sentence is an independent clause. It's a complete sentence. This part is dependent upon the rest of that sentence in order to make sense. It doesn't make sense by itself. So we're looking for a sentence that has one of those awubises at the beginning, when. I could say after I heard Evanescence for the first time. But the main thing is here that there's a subject and a verb. I heard. And these are probably the trickiest things that we're going to have to learn about this year. So the sooner that you kind of get that separation between what a prepositional phrase and a dependent clause is, the easier it's going to be for you. And it really boils down to that verb. The next type of varied sentence, and we have talked much about these, and we're usually looking at them in our writing, but let's talk about how you can incorporate them into your writing. We know what figurative language is: similes, metaphors, personification, and hyperboles, but we can put them into our writing to make it sound a lot more descriptive, and really it makes your writing sound a lot more fun. They can be added anywhere in a sentence. Unlike all of our introductory words and phrases, you don't need to start your sentence with a simile or a metaphor. You can kind of put it in wherever you want to. And a good place to put them is to be thinking about, ideas, images that you want your reader to see and understand, and what you can relate it to, how you can compare it. The best way to really get better at writing figurative language is to start finding figurative language. Listen to it when you're reading. Look for examples of figurative language, because all good writers use it. So my example is, listening to heavy metal music on the way to work in the morning wakes me up like drinking a pot of strong coffee. I've got a simile here because I've got a comparison using like. I'm comparing drinking a pot of coffee to listening to heavy metal music. When we do a simile, we're thinking of, well, what quality do they both share? They both wake you up. So that's a good simile that maybe I could think if my reader, my audience, might be able to identify with a little bit more. We've talked about commands, and these can't always be put into sentences or into any type of writing that you're doing, but it's just something that you need to be aware of as a good varied sentence type, and that is a command. Our commands often start with a verb, and that's because they're commanding you, the subject, to do something. So, for example, don't listen to heavy metal music when you're doing your homework. Okay, that's a command to you, telling you not to listen to heavy metal music. You know why, right? Because it can be a little distracting. You should always listen to classical music when you're doing your homework. And I'm sure that when you guys listen to your headphones in class, that's exactly what you're listening to. Okay, so a command starts with a verb, starts with the action. Don't listen to heavy metal music. And we show that when we're labeling our sentences by putting that set of parentheses in front of it to show that we know, we understand that you are the subject. The last type of sentence is an appositive. And I know you've talked about these. We've talked about these a little bit in class and touched on them. We really have not spent a lot of time looking at them or finding them, but we're going to start doing that. An appositive is just really a great way to add description to your writing. If you're looking for them, you're looking for a noun that has a comma after it, that has another noun and some modifiers, and that definition should make sense when we look at our example sentence here in a minute. Okay. The important thing to remember when we look for that set of commas is that they don't start with who, which, or that when we look within that phrase, because if we have a word, the who, which, and that, it's indicating that we have a dependent clause, probably. And they're just good for giving more information about the noun that it's following. And we use commas to separate it. So, let's look here. Hayley Williams, the lead singer of Paramore, can really rock out. If I'm looking for my comma phrase, I see a noun with a comma after it. So, if you don't know who Hayley Williams is, she is the lead singer of Paramore. This phrase here, this is the appositive, that's giving you more information about who Hayley Williams is, in case you didn't know. Now, I could also see over here that I've got the name Paramore with a comma after it. If I'm not sure where the appositive is, I look at the phrase that comes after and think, does can really rock out give me more information about Paramore, like who Paramore is or what they're like? This is my verb phrase. What are they doing? They can really rock out. But that's not a noun phrase that's giving more information about Paramore. Another way to check for your appositive is see if you can take it out. If I think that can really rock out is an appositive, then it doesn't need to be in the sentence. I should be able to say, Hayley Williams, the lead singer of Paramore. That, of course, is not a complete sentence, so this can't be an appositive. It has to be there. I could take this phrase out. Hayley Williams can really rock out. The lead singer of Paramore doesn't have to be in that sentence. It's an appositive. It can be taken out. But with that appositive in there, it really doubles, sometimes more than doubles, the length of your sentence, gives it some good variety, and helps your reader get a better image of who it is that you're talking about. Okay? So this should complete all of your notes for today.